In a sea of dysfunctionality when it comes to dating, I think it behooves us to know, or at least for the ladies out there, to know which guys are serious and which men are flaky and non-committal. Now, this begs the question, is it better to go quick in the process or take your time? And we're going to explore that because it's something occurred to me this morning as I was preparing for this video. And I'm going to talk about those seven early signs a man's ready to be committed to you. But something occurred to me. You know, prior to the 1950s, people used to get married rather quickly. They, in some cases, knew each other for they might knew each other in the town they lived in or the city they lived in, but they got married rather quickly because back then, if you wanted to have sex, you oftentimes got married. And prior to the 50s, marriage actually had a fairly strong success rate. So think about that. I mean, for the most part, if you got married, you were most likely going to stay together, probably at a rate of 70, 80, or 90%, excluding death. Okay. Then around the 50s, that changed it. Now, I think divorce attorneys shifted that rather predominantly because it became the proliferation of divorce attorneys out in the marketplace created an opportunity for people to end their relationship. So today we have roughly about a 50% success rate with marriage. And when you think about this, people that live together, there's studies that say people that live together oftentimes have a lower success rate than those that get married. Okay, that might be true. People that live together don't necessarily have to fully commit to one another as marriage. But I want you to think about this success rate. How many relationships people have actually turn into either moving in together or getting married? That success rate might be far lower. That might not be 50% for marriage and let's just say 30% for living together. The success rate of people in relationships might only be 15 to 20%. I'm guessing here because I'm just speculating here. And then let's think about the success rate for dating. The success rate for dating is probably less than 5%. In other words, probably, I'm going to guess it's less than 5% of people who are actively dating prior to relationship actually form a relationship together. And of those that form a relationship together, probably don't move in together. And of those that move in together, probably some of those don't get married. So why is this important to know? Because the reality is, as I said in the beginning of this broadcast, in a sea of dysfunctionality, it's rather important to understand the mechanics to a healthy, happy relationship. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to share the 5 stages of relationships every couple goes through. Okay, every couple goes through these stages of relationship, and this will better prepare you to understand the early signs of whether or not a man is either capable of commitment or truly wants to commit to you. Now, the first stage is rather obvious, the honeymoon stage. This is where lust and limerence and excitement and butterflies take us over. This is why people oftentimes jump into the bedroom quickly because they're in this awe and excitement. They're in this space of attraction, and that's rather understandable for many couples. The sad part is many people believe that this excitement leads to relationship success because most people don't understand the mechanics to a healthy, happy relationship. If you haven't read the book, here, how to be an adult in relationships by David Richo. I highly recommend checking out this book. By the way, there's a link below to all the books I recommend. Why am I recommending this book? Because a lot of people don't show up as grown-ups. We are, as I said, swimming in a sea of dysfunctionality. A lot of that is because humans are rather dysfunctional. Roughly, I state anecdotally, 80% of singles are rather messed up. They have weak emotional skills and they have, weak relationship skills, and they have poor emotional maturity. This is true of men and women alike. So when you're in this honeymoon stage, here's what happens next. All of a sudden, the differences between two people create doubt and denial. Doubt and denial. So when you're in that stage of doubt and denial, this is where men start to pull away. They start to pull back from the relationship because the honeymoon phase, and these days the honeymoon phase can simply be a couple weeks or a couple months at best, but the reality of the relationship sets in. It also is the reality of how emotionally capable is this person to be in a relationship begins to set in. That's the second stage. The third stage is the disillusionment. The disillusionment problems become so. Once you think about this, we go through these seasons. There's the summer, the hot phase, the fall phase, that's the doubt phase, the disillusionment, that's the winter phase. And just to give you an example, and I wrote notes on this and disillusionment. Disillusionment is when the hard truth of reality makes you lose faith in your dreams and ideas. You might have thought your internship at the movie studio would be this super glamorous job, but you quickly suffered from the disillusionment when you realize it's a 14-hour days and a lot of coffee runs, okay? We all go through a period of disillusionment. In other words, the idea of a relationship doesn't meet up. The fantasy of a relationship doesn't actually meet up with the reality of the relationship. Most of you know I'm in a significant relationship. There's my sweetheart, picture of her right there. I'll be candid with you. Even as much as I do this work, I still had my box of what I thought a relationship should look like. A significant relationship should look like. And what I mean is I had the fantasy of that honeymoon period being 24/7 constant. I thought it would just never, end. I really did have that prior to meeting her. What I learned was something unique was because we established the deep roots of trust early on because we practiced radical honesty. This is something I teach in my private coaching. By the way, there's a link right here to schedule a free discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. And in the description below, there's a link. I learned quickly because through radical honesty, through a method of laying our cards on the table. And again, I teach this in my private coaching. I was able to pass through this disillusionment stage and realize something more important within this relationship. And that is a sense of I could be myself. I could really be myself. I was able to recognize that this is a partner I feel safe with, I feel comfortable with, to be myself. And I'm not a pretty person all the time. I mean, I have my issues, folks. Hey, listen, for all the work I've done in the area of self-love, hey, listen, we all have flaws and foibles within us. I'm grateful that my partner accepts me for those. The fourth phase is the decision phase. That's really what I went through, that decision phase. It didn't meet up with the fantasy of what I wanted. Now, in my particular case, even though we have differences, I had to make a decision. Was it worth going back out in the dating marketplace to go find someone even better? Because that's what oftentimes happens, especially because of our devices and our ability to swipe away. And in that space, I made a decision. I said, this person is amazing. I want to be with this person. It's worth investing. And the last stage is the capacity if you can fix your problems. In other words, do you make time to discuss your differences and do you actively work on fixing them? And that's the space of the 5 stages of relationship. You can read the book, How to Be an Adult Relationship, to get some insight into that. I want to recommend one other book, and I'm now going to talk about those 7 early warning signs. There's one other book I want to recommend. Even though it's a marriage book, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, I love this book because it really outlines the mechanics to a healthy, happy relationship. In other words, when you understand how a relationship works, you're better prepared to be in a relationship. And more importantly, you're better prepared to catch these 7 early warning signs a man wants to be committed to you. Okay? So, number 1, and this is early in the dating process, he makes time for you. He keeps in touch with you. Now, this is rather obvious, and yet many of you are experiencing relationships where the guy, right after you have sex together, he starts to pull away. That's because the honeymoon phase was literally just the let me get you in bed phase. So when you start to see consistency of wanting to make time for you after the physical state, that's a great sign that he wants to be committed to you. Certainly, number 2 is his actions match his words. That's another great sign that he wants to be committed to you. His actions match his words. Number 3, he's transparent about his past. He's not in a space of being secretive. Sadly, many people today are acting rather secretive in their relationships. They're not actively being, I think it's really important, as I said in our relationship, to lay your cards on the table early on because, listen, all right, I want to go back to something I said earlier. I talked about marriage, living together, relationships, and dating. Okay, the success rate. I was recently talking to a therapist who said during COVID, many couples moved in together rather quickly during after they dated for a bit, formed a relationship, and moved in together. And they're recognizing problems in their relationship. And she said it was the men who were actually scheduling the appointments with her. But what I think is most important about the difference, the idea of moving quickly versus taking your time, if the success rate with dating is so weak, I think it's important before you become physical with someone to immediately establish, are we in a relationship? Okay. I think it's critically important to do that. I think once you've established your relationship, I believe it's critically important to lay down the foundation of why are we doing this? Ladies, many of you are in these so-called relationships. You have no idea where it's going. You have no idea you're in a committed relationship. You're still in this dating phase because you're in a space of uncertainty. It's critically important to lay down the law. I call it the rules of engagement. And the rules of engagement state this. Are we exploring a fully committed relationship that leads to either moving in together or getting married at some point? Because if you're actively having sex with someone, you have every right to ask those questions. And it's better to get that foundation set early. And this is a great way to test a guy. Does his actions match his words? Now, just remember this. A lot of guys will say in the early stages before you have sex with them, I want a relationship. You better get clarity on what that means, okay? What does a relationship mean? How often are you going to spend time together? Are you going to do social activities, hobbies, mutual interests? Are you going to integrate your family and friends together? Because without an understanding of what a relationship looks like, particularly and how much time you're going to spend together, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And I know many of you could say, well, Jonathan, I'm supposed to just be in my feminine and the man is supposed to lead the process. Ladies, I'm here to say to you, you are in charge of your relationship destiny. Don't give that up to a man. Look, I wish I could be there on a first date for you. I'd have the shotgun out, point at the guy's face and say, what's your intentions with my sister? You have to establish the intentions early on. Let go of this narrative that you just sit back and just watch, sit back and let him lead because men are supposed to be the provider and protectors and the hunters, and that's what they're supposed to do. Okay, that's great. But for the most part, you're dealing with a lot of wishy-washy men after divorce because my audience is predominantly midlife, which is after baby making years and before retirement. Most guys are rather clueless. They're winging it. So you got to lay down the law. In other words, if he wants to see you, then you better establish what it looks like, what you're seeking in the former relationship. And this way you can watch if his actions match his words. Number 3, is he transparent about his past? I said this before. Is he transparent about his past? Is he secretive about his past, or is he upfront and transparent? That's a critically important thing to do in laying the cards on the table. Number 4, does he engage you in his life? Does he engage you in his life? Does he invite you to meet his family and friends? Or excuse me, does he engage you in his life by sharing his personal life with you? And does he ask your opinion? That's a really important thing to think about. Does he ask your opinion about things? That's a great sign that a man wants to be committed with you. I'm early on in my dating, by the way, Marie and I bypassed dating, went straight to a relationship, and then we moved in together within 5 months of knowing each other. Okay, that might be not the norm, but certainly it's a commitment to one another. But early on, I asked her advice about my videos. This is why she suggested I dress a little bit nicer and some other things. I asked her opinion. That's engaging you in their life. I asked her her opinion with respects to my son and other areas of my life. That's engaging you in your life. Number 5, he asked you to meet his family and friends. He wants to see if you fit into his life. That's a great sign that he wants to move forward with commitment with you. By the way, my coffee mug says, "Don't make me go all psycho roommate on you." I know sometimes in my videos it might seem that way, that I get all riled up and excited. So just so you know, it's a reflection of that mug. He asks you to meet his family and friends. Now, that's not a guarantee, but that's certainly better than those that try to avoid integrating you into his life. Okay, number 6, he's protective of you, not just physically, but emotionally. I think a true gentleman is a man who recognizes that if he's not serious about a relationship, he won't ever engage you in a relationship. And yet, true gentlemen probably represent less than 20% of the single population out there. But a man who genuinely is protective of your feelings, in other words, he's conscious enough to know that his words, his miswords matter to you. And so how you can notice this is he being protective of your emotions, or is it all about his emotions and what he wants to feel? A true gentleman, real trust is built not just through fidelity. Real trust is built by, you know, your best interests are my best interests. Your feelings matter to me as much as my feelings matter to me. So in other words, he's actively engaging in wanting to get your feelings on how the relationship is going, and he's actively engaging there because he's protective of your feelings. Many men, you know, we throw out the word narcissist, or I don't throw out the word narcissist, but the word narcissist is thrown out significantly. That's because a lot of times people confuse self-centric behavior, self-centered behavior as narcissists. No, it's just most people in the dating realm are hyper focused on their own needs, and they're not actually they're not leaning into your needs. And that's a good sign if he does that. And number 7, he understands that relationships are about the future and not living in the moment. How many times have you heard people say, "I just want to live in the moment. It's just about the moment. Let's just live in the moment." Listen, this is why you got to do what I call rules of engagement early on, especially prior to having sex, or at least shortly thereafter, because, you know, I shot a video recently about getting used. This is where a lot of people get used because they're not talking about the future in the early stages. Marie and I, we talked about the future literally by the time we spent that weekend at my place. Right after that, we talked about how a future we looked, because we were in a long distance relationship. We mapped out how this would work. And within a month or so after that, it made sense for us to live together, to see if this is going to work. We took the risk. Okay. Now we felt enough trust for one another. And I get many of the men you're dating, you know little or nothing about them. This is why I recommend even doing background checks. She did background check on me before we met. I actually appreciate that. Thankfully, I have so much. If you Googled my name, there's plenty of content out there. But I would definitely, you know, you have to go beyond the surface of getting to know someone. That's why meeting their friends, meeting their family, talking to these people gives you a better insight if you want to invest in this person. But a man who is genuinely talking about the future, talking about commitment, what that would look like, is a good sign that he wants to be committed to you. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating? Please let me know. If it is, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel right now. And also check out the links below to a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. Check out my group called Midlife Love Mastery, and check out all the books I recommend. It's in the description show notes of this video. All right, this is our time to take questions. Those who know my format know. If you have a question, write the word question and then post the question thereafter. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. All of the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Asley. That's a picture of him right there. He's my son who passed away going on almost 5 years ago. In his honor, I donate to causes like the Hoffman Process and Insight Institute, just to name a few. And if you're watching the replay, please give those super thanks as well. All right, let's see what we have here.